So my name is Pamela Darling-Facio, and I am with the ELC. I work out of the McKinney campus, but we do have someone like me at each of the three campuses if you ever need in-person help. This is the new Canvas Gradebook. Web Services rolled this out in May. It's actually been in beta testing for well over a year, and some people have been already using it because you could turn it on in the beta. But this now is officially what's out there. So everyone's gradebook should look similar to this. There's a couple things that have changed. The main one right here is the gradebook. All these menus at the top are a little bit different now. So the gradebook is still sorted in columns. It's automatically generated whenever you create an assignment, a quiz, or a graded discussion. It will create a column in your gradebook for you. There's nothing you need to do to get it there. So at the top, the first menu we have is the gradebook menu. We're looking at the gradebook in the regular view right here. You have two options for gradebook views. You can look at an individual view, which maybe you have a student coming in to meet with you and you want to talk to them specifically about them. You can't obviously show the gradebook to the whole for the whole class to that student. So you can come into the individual view, select a student, and then you'll actually see specifically this is a weighted gradebook. So I have 4 areas of weighting, and they have the percentage right here. But from here, the name of the student is a link. So I can click that link, and that'll take me into a view that is almost identical to what the student sees. This is what the student would see if they went into a gradebook on their side. They can see assignments that are missing. They can see assignments that have been assigned a grade, something that was late, etc. This section here where I have the quizzes, I have a rule set up on the quizzes that it's dropping the lowest one quiz score. So this is the one that's being dropped. It's got the X there. When you want to get back, you can just go to the grades again. And then at the top here, we're going to go back to the gradebook view from the individual view. And that'll take you back into the default view. The other view in here is a history. The gradebook history will allow you to see what's happened over time in the gradebook and who's been making the changes. There are often times where there's more than one instructor in a particular class. So you can see in here who the grader is, who the student was, and then the assignment that was graded, and the before and after if there was a change. We use this gradebook for all of these webinars and training sessions that we do, so you can see there's a lot of different graders and things are happening all the time in here. The nice part is too that you can also look at the history by sorting it. So if I want to look at a particular grader and see just what I've done in this gradebook, I can type my name in here as the grader and filter it, and then I'll see just the things that I've graded and how they've turned out. And then again, to get back, I'm just going to go to grades. The next new menu is the view option right here. So in view, you can now look at your gradebook in a number of different ways in this column format. By default, the gradebook will arrange in due date order. So it's going to go with the oldest due date into the newest. You can also arrange it by assignment name, A to Z, Z to A, by due date, by the points value, or by module. You can group it within modules. You can also filter the gradebook. This is kind of nice if you want to look at just one assignment group. Maybe you're finding that a lot of students aren't doing well on the essays. So you can choose an assignment group, filter it, and it will only show the essay grades for those classes. These columns over here on this side are the actual weighted areas. So it's still going to show all the weighted areas, but it's only going to show the essays. To unfilter it, just go back to all assignment groups, or you can go back and take the check mark off of assignment groups that you filtered by. Statuses is also a new feature that's really nice. You notice all the color coding that's in this gradebook. You set those status colors yourself. So when I click on statuses, I can see that any assignment that's late is going to show up in blue automatically. I don't have to apply the status. It will just show in blue when an assignment is submitted after the due date. Any assignment that's missing, meaning I gave it a 0, is going to show up in red. If students have resubmitted an assignment, it'll show up in green. When I've dropped the lowest score, it's going to show in yellow, and anything that I excuse, it's going to show up in purple. I can click the dots here, and I can choose a different color. So if I want late to maybe be in this brown, I can choose the brown and click apply, and done. And then you can see this assignment that was late has now changed its color status. So when I go over to the quizzes, I had mentioned that I have a rule here where it's dropping the lowest score. The dropped score is always in yellow. If a score changes, for example, if this student here got maybe a 4 on this score instead of a 0, now that automatically becomes a dropped one because it's the lowest. So those colors can really let you know pretty quickly what's happening with a particular student or a score, if you remember, knowing what your colors are set up as. The next thing in the view column is you have 2 new columns that you can turn on and off. These are toggles. You click it once to turn it on, and then you click it again to turn it off. So for example, I have unpublished assignments turned on. There's a check mark in here. So I'll see unpublished assignments that are in my gradebook. These are assignments that I've created. I have added them to my assignments, but they're not published, so they are not visible to students. They are visible to me, though, in the gradebook. I can turn that off by just clicking on Published Assignments, and I won't see those anymore. The other new column is a Notes column. When I click Notes, I get this new column here at the beginning where I can actually add a note. These are notes that are only visible to me, not to anyone else, but I can go in here and add a note. Maybe I know that this student talked to me and he has jury duty next week. And then that kind of gives me a reminder as to what's going on with the students. You can, again, turn the notes column off if you don't want to see that as well. So that's going to toggle back and forth. So there's a couple of people in the chat box. So let me just flip over to there real quick. So Courtney, yes, I'm sorry. Your color options will stay when you copy the course shell over. It's like one of the settings, just like your navigation, when you adjust the navigation, the course navigation, that copies over, and those color settings will as well. All right. So the next menu here is, sorry, actions. Actions are similar. You saw those before. They were just in another area. Actions will allow you to export your gradebook. As a faculty member at the end of every semester, you will need to export your gradebook and send it to your associate dean or program coordinator. This is where you would do that export. The import, I have tried this in a number of formats. I've tried it with Excel files, I've tried it with CSV files, and I can't get it to actually work. I think because you have to have identical matches between student names, assignment names, etc. And it's just, as soon as there's one little glitch, it doesn't really work well. I don't know when you would even really need to do an import of grades, because all of your course information is going to come over when you do a course import or a course copy. And most publisher content will automatically sync with your gradebook, so that shouldn't be an issue either. But you are welcome to play with that if you want. I have never been able to really get it to work, and I have read a ton of help documents on it. So then there's also a little keyboard shortcut menu here that pops up, gives you keyboard shortcuts that you can perform if you need to. And lastly is the search area. So in here, I could type a student name, and it automatically, as I'm typing, filters to show me just that student. And then I just delete the information that I typed in there, and I've unfiltered the gradebook now. You also have a cogwheel over here on the side. This is a new feature. The cogwheel will allow you to automatically assign a late policy. I have tried using this late policy because in the courses that I teach, I do assign a late policy of 10% per day that it's late. So this seems to be the perfect option because I can put 10% per day. Lowest grade is 50%. That's what my policy is. The problem is that this automatically applies to every single graded item in your gradebook, quizzes, discussions, etc. And it applies to the total points. So for example, I have some assignments that are 2 parts, Part A and Part B. Maybe a student turned Part A in on time, but not Part B. it will apply the late penalty to the total points, not just Part B. So in order for me to get this late policy to work, I would have to split that assignment into two. So I have not used this in a regular class because it just doesn't really work for my needs, but it is a great way to apply a late policy for your assignments. It's telling me here, giving me a warning though, because I've already graded work. So if I were to use this after I've graded work, it's going to go back retroactively and apply that late policy. So in order to do the late, you have to have a due date on an assignment. If there's no due date listed, it doesn't know when the assignment will be late. The second section, or really the top part of here, is automatically apply grades for missing submissions. So if student has not submitted an assignment, I can automatically apply that 0 to all assignments, which is nice because in the past, you have to go into each assignment and set a default grade of 0. A lot of people don't set that default grade, which really isn't a big deal right now since Banner does not communicate with our Canvas system, but at some point it will communicate. And if you don't set a grade of 0 for a missing assignment, then that's going to be an excused assignment. And it may change their grade from what you think they have to what actually shows up in Banner. So, but again, that's not something we have to worry about quite yet. So the late policy is new over as well, and that's under that cogwheel. So when you're entering grades in the gradebook, there's a lot of options here as well. This first essay, I have this one set up with a grading scheme. So I apply a letter grade to these essays. If I click into a student's cell, this is called the grade tray, I can click the drop-down arrow and I automatically see the letter grades that I've established. And those letter grades and that grading scheme is set up in the assignment itself, and I can show you where that is. But I can apply a letter grade here. The letter grade, when I give this student a C, it's going to give them the points for the highest possible C, which I've set at 79. So they're actually going to earn 79%. And I can see that when I scroll over to their essay. Well, they had a 0 in here, so let me take that 0 out. I'll make this one excused. So you can see that their essay is a 79%. So even though I gave them a C, they earned 79% of the points. And it has to assign some sort of points, so it looks at the top range that you've established. In order to set those grading schemes, you can go directly into the assignment from the gradebook. I'm just going to click Essay 1. And edit. And right here, I choose Display Grade As. And I've chosen a letter grade, and then I click the View Grading Scheme. So here I picked my grading scheme that I want to use, so that's where we're getting those numbers. So let me go ahead and go back into the gradebook. You could also, in this second essay, this one is entered as a number, so maybe I could type a number into here, go back into this one, and maybe the student earned an 85. You can type directly into here. When you're also in this grade detail tray, there's a little arrow there on the side. When you click that arrow, it pops open the student, the assignment. It gives me a speed grader option. I can put the assignment grade in here. I can also apply some of those statuses that we saw, late, missing, or excused. From here, you can see too that these are all links. So I can go into the student here, I can go to the assignment, or I can go to speed grader. There's also arrows that let you go from one assignment to the next for this student, or I can go to the next student by using the arrows up there. When I'm done using the grade tray, I just click the X to close that. All right, let me scroll over. I have another assignment down here at the end, this welcome. This assignment is set up, I'll go ahead and look at it, as complete and incomplete. So it doesn't matter, I don't care how well they did it, either they did it or they did not do it. It's just a discussion, a graded discussion. I just want to know that they did it. So if I look at the assignment settings, this is a graded discussion. It's worth 10 points. And my grade display, instead of being a letter grade, a points, or a percentage, is complete or incomplete. So if I go back into grades, when I click the drop down arrow in the grade tray, I'm only going to have those choices of complete, incomplete, or excused. So here there will be the complete, incomplete, ungraded, or excused. If I choose complete, then they get 100% of the possible points, which are only 10. If I choose incomplete, they would get 0 points. So it's either all or none with the complete and incomplete. You can also now really easily move columns within your gradebook. If I just click in a column heading, I can drag it to a new location. So maybe I want this class orientation at the very beginning of my gradebook, rather than letting it sort on any of those sort statuses that we saw here. Arrange by. You can drag also the totals. So for example, here I have my essay total. Maybe I want this to be after all of my essays. Because my screen size, I have to kind of do this in chunks. So I have essay 1, 2, 3, and then this is the total of my essays. This is the graded group. So I can move any of my columns around that I like. In previous gradebooks, you could really only move your total column to the beginning, which is still an option. If you move on to any column, you also get these 3 dots. If I click here, I can move this column to the front. And now the total column automatically shows up in the front of the gradebook. Those 3 dots are going to be available on any of the assignments as well, but they're just going to have some different options. So within an assignment, I can sort to show low to high, anything that's missing. I can message students. I use this one a lot. I mute an assignment. Muting an assignment means that students can't see it in the gradebook. It'll just say that your instructor is viewing this assignment, working on this assignment, but they can still submit it. So when I do a final exam or a midterm, I don't necessarily want the students to be able to see what's going on with that until I've graded everybody. So I'll mute the assignment, which just means that students can't see it, but it's still there. This little icon shows up in my total, meaning that there's something muted within the gradebook. So I'll mute that, and then as I get a few days before the finals due, I can message students who haven't submitted, who haven't been graded, who've scored more or less. Maybe you let them resubmit. So you might want to message students who've scored less than a 7. Say, hey, just an FYI, you don't forget that you can take this a second time to try to improve your grade. Then it's only going to go to those students, not to everyone in your gradebook. So again, I do use that message students quite a bit. Let me unmute. When you unmute an assignment, students automatically receive a notification that their assignment's been unmuted, so they know they can go in there and look at it. That's assuming that they have their notifications turned on. You can curve grades. We don't recommend that you curve grades unless your department wants you to curve grades, but that's an option to do here in the gradebook. You can set a default grade. A default grade would be a grade that's given if no other grade is awarded. So if you have areas, for example, this essay 2, I'm going to set a default grade of 0. So that means if somebody hasn't submitted, they're going to end up with a 0. It tells me 2 students were updated, and now those 2 have 0. It's a good idea to always do a default grade, or to go in after the due date and give 0s to students who did not submit, for 2 reasons. One, if they have their notifications turned on, it's going to send them a notification that they earned a 0, and maybe that'll kind of spark them, oh shoot, I forgot I need to do that. And if you allow late work, they can still do it. Secondly, if you're not entering 0s for unsubmitted assignments, they're not counted in the student's total grade. So a student can submit 1 assignment for the semester, shows that they have 100%, but then at the end of the semester, when you go to turn in grades, they're going to have an F because they've only submitted the 1 assignment. They're looking at Canvas saying, but I've got 100%. So it is a good idea for 2 reasons to go ahead and do that default grade. You can do it here, or you can do it into the individual grade. I actually go into SpeedGrader, and I will put the 0 in there, and I'll add a comment, not submitted, due, blah, 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 and I'll let them know, refer to the late policy on how to submit late work. You don't have to do it on every assignment, but it's a good idea to kind of give the students a heads up that they didn't submit it, they can still submit it if that's the policy, and to give them that opportunity just as a reminder. All right, I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody and see if anyone has any other questions. All right. Well, thank you for attending. I'm going to send out in just a few minutes here a follow up with an evaluation. Also, we have added a new gradebooks, Canvas gradebook link to our ELC web pages with a ton of resources. So I'll send you a link to that as well so that you can check out some other things. There's some videos on there from Canvas. There's a comparison table that shows the before and after of the gradebook. All right. So have a good day. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share and end the meeting.